Do you have
Is
any?
there anything else you would like to add to all this?
Haven't I talked enough? Haven't I given you too
You
much?
have, but
No,
anything else?
no, no. I'm joking. I'd love to talk about this. I mean, I'm always interested in what you're going through now as a female comic, and if things have changed. I guess I'm answering my own question. I know that they haven't changed, but I'd like to think that we put some wind under your wings and that it's a little bit easier for women.
Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, that's where I, the way that I kind of saw Femprov was that you guys had kind of a home base to kind of touch on, that you could go do separate projects, you could do different things, and but how important it was to have that a holding place, which, like, I don't think we need that holding place as much now, but also maybe we do. Like that is the other thing, is that maybe if we had something like that, we would have a stronger base. I'm not sure, but I think that is one of those things. I mean, I still think, I still like I there are different views around like booking women on shows, and like once I had heard, and this was 10 years back, but once I heard like, oh, the guy who books that show for who he thinks the girlfriends of the guys in the audience will like.
No.
I know that was 10 years back, 10 years
Yep.
back.
Yep. Exactly.
But and there's still times where like I'm introduced as I mean, like this week I was at an open mic, and this is a good example. At an open mic in Sacramento, there's a comic on stage, and I have my bag, and like I'm bringing my own mic now so that I don't have to share
Oh,
spit
smart.
with anybody. Yeah. Um, and I'm looking at my notes, and a woman came up to me and said, "Oh, are you that guy's wife?" And I was like, "No, no, no, I'm not." And then I got up on stage and I did my thing, and then she kept on shouting out, like, I don't know if it was overcompensation or what, but she was like, "We love you. That's just great." Like affirmative, annoying things.
Yeah, right, exactly. But she obviously like knew I misstepped there, right? And I can remember going into a club in San Jose and arriving with the other comics. And the producer greeted them and talked to them directly and made eye contact and just assumed I was the girlfriend tagging along, right?
And I still, one of my best friends is a guy I do comedy with him a lot, and they will talk to him more than they'll talk to me sometimes, and he has to kind of make a point as like, oh, and she's on the show too.
Right, exactly. It seemed like we had a bajillion open mics that we could work our stuff out. And I don't see it in the paper. I don't know if it exists. I mean, I'm not hooked in anymore to where you go and work out your stuff. Is it, are you at home and working to your sofa, or it felt like there was Sunday nights at the Punchline. There was Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, maybe at the zoo. There was the other cafe had a couple of nights. I mean, you could work 3 different open mics in a night if you had a car,
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I mean, there are some days you can do 4 mics in one night, but it's not in San Francisco. It's in San Jose. And since I'm in Oakland, I'm able to kind of go around.
Right.
But like the big clubs don't really have an open mic, and like, yeah, they have an open, like the Improv started doing open mics in San Jose. It's not an open mic. No one's gonna try new stuff at the Improv, and so it's the little shit bars,
right,
are the ones where you have that.
Right, exactly. And I would have to say John and Kathy's was a great proving ground. I mean, for the first time to get up on stage in front of an audience with my stand-up. And you know what? And I know that I had done my stand up at the other cafe. That was like one of my first times. And I, again, what was I thinking? I had a little ukulele that I had a recording in that was going to play like super duper ukulele music. I even cut a little hole in the ukulele so I could push the button. And then the battery was not charged or it had run out of juice. So I'm literally going, time to improvise, on my first time up. I mean, that just is ridiculous. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
I,
there's no place like there. The other cafe sounds like a very special, a very San Francisco open mic. Nothing like that.
it was extremely nurturing. Everybody needed nurturing at that point. I can remember Paula coming and watching Femprov, and I know she would sit in the back and write material because you're in the room and you can feel what the room is about, kind of. And I think a lot of, I'm not taking credit for this, but I think a lot of how she deals with the audience and how well she does it probably was spawned from us working with the audience.
Yeah.
Most of the comedy at that time was just, I'm talking now, you listen to me, as opposed to with improv, please, we need to have a dialogue here, right? And I think Paula, who does it masterfully in her act, she can go off on a tangent and just keep someone talking and making it funnier and funnier as it goes by.
Well, and I feel that, like, in my book, what I talk about is that the improvisational part of stand up is really like the San Francisco signature, going from, to comics of North Beach. And when I talked to Don Novello, he said that the thing that helped him was he did a Q&A with the audiences at the boarding house, and how much that helped him. And like that improvisation, and Robin, of course, and then going into the other cafe, that like that string is really what I think makes us a more unique area, in part because you can mess up here and you can't in other areas.
Right. I think another thing that runs through, and just because most of the clips I showed you, I'm singing and Femprov singing, right? And Kevin Meaney sang, Jeremy Crane sang, all of these people. And maybe we were just filled with the joy of music or whatever. Maybe we all wanted to be rock stars. Maybe that's really what it came down to. Just the idea of getting up on stage and just belting. Well, it was always a great feeling for me. And I would imagine Kevin felt the same way. I mean, he was just
so with it.
Joyous in his singing. Exactly. So I think that's sort of an interesting vein that runs through it as well, is that there was a whole lot of musical stuff going on. And maybe that was some sort of transitioning between, like an osmosis. I mean, is it any wonder that we were next door to the Last Day Saloon at the Holy City Zoo, right? Or Punchline was on the other side of the Waldorf, right? Or I'm just trying to make the connection now as I'm thinking about it here.
And like, actually, that's something that I've kind of thought about, especially in the Oakland area, and like the Vallejo, because we had rap that was so big in the 80s, and how did that impact the Black comics? And because rap in Oakland in the 80s was really funny. And and then I wonder what this symbiosis is with that too.
Well, and it's just, expressing yourself and whatever voice you need to use. Maybe there's a little bit of, not hiding behind it, but it's supposed to speaking your own words and forming, sentences and, your treatise or your manifesto or whatever. It's like you're depending on music to sort of make it palatable, certainly make it easy to swallow.